Hello and welcome to Cricketomania. The question that we are asking today on the heels of what's been happening in England with the Indian cricket team is, has coach Duncan Fletcher failed the team? That's a big question to ask. There are a lot of answers. Remember, he's a man who came to India from Zimbabwe via Wales and England. He was also the coach for England before he became the coach for India. He's had a much better run with England, but not with India. And we, of course, want to find out why. With me to answer and pose the right questions, Ayaz Memon, my co-anchor, former Mumbai cricket captain Milind Rege, and joining us on Google Hangout, Navneeth, a cricket fanatic from Hyderabad. Also will be joining us Abhishek Dubey, a cricket journalist on the line. Gentlemen, all thank you very much for joining us. Ayaz, let's go.
So the issue really is, and I think this is something which has been bothering layperson, former cricketers, aficionados, all those who are interested in the game. Duncan Fletcher came here actually with some impeccable kind of record, and he was actually nominated to, in a sense, by Gary Kirsten. He said Indian cricket will benefit if Fletcher comes here. It's been what, three years that he's been around, and the record is pretty dismal. It's in complete contrast to what his record was for England. So is the issue that is he not able to communicate with the players?
But in England too, he left on a weak note, right? I mean, he won them the Ashes for the first time after 18 years in 2005.
Yes.
And it was in 2006-07 that he actually left because things went south.
So his contract was expiring, and towards the end, of course, he was fading away. Now, several questions come up. Is he too old for contemporary cricket, and therefore there is a generational gap? Is there a communication gap? Is it that the team is letting him down? I mean, let's look at all kinds of issues.
Right, and that's a question to pose. And he's also not a cricketer.
He has been a cricketer for Zimbabwe. He's been a captain for Zimbabwe. He's played a lot of cricket in his lifetime.
But has he played Test cricket?
He has played Test cricket too.
Great. Okay, so let's get a few voices in first, and then we sort of continue with our discussion. We asked this question to a lot of people in the city of Mumbai, young people, what they thought of Duncan Fletcher and whether he had indeed failed the team.
एकदम ही बेकार परफॉर्मेंस रहा है इंडिया का, तो मेरे हिसाब से टीम सिलेक्शन सही होनी चाहिए थी. इससे पहले जो खेली गई थी वो टीम खेलना चाहिए था. मेरे हिसाब से तो ये सही रहता था. और कोच की बात है तो कोच का काम है सिखाना. कोच का काम तो ऑब्वियस सिखाना है. और प्लेयर, और फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो इंडिया के काफ़ी प्लेयर जो फिट नहीं है उन्हें लिया गया है.
Looking at his his past performances, I think yes, as a coach he has failed, and of course the drubbing at England. I don't know what. I think it's time for a replacement for the Indian coach.
I don't think so. Duncan Fletcher has been failed as a coach because it depends on individual game and everything. So I don't think so. Duncan Fletcher has failed.
No, he has not failed as an Indian cricketer, as an Indian cricket team coach, because he has always been there, been with them through all the ups and downs, and he has guided them all over. So I don't think as a coach he has failed.
I feel personally that coach can't do anything until the cricketers play well. And the thing is, Duncan Fletcher is doing his work, whatever he's doing over there. But still, the cricketers need to perform well, and they are the only one who can show their potential and make us win in London.
Coach is very important to our team because he's involved in the technical aspect of the game. The way he inspires his players matters a lot. So what I can say, like for a team to go in the right direction, there must be a leader, there must be a coach who can inspire the team to get the result.
I don't think he's failed as a coach. Maybe he has made some mistakes, but then you can't really blame the coach for the team's performance, at least not completely.
Right, so a whole bunch of youngsters, they are clearly more forgiving than we thought they would be. So, okay, before we proceed, Vidhu Balakrishnan pointed out on Twitter saying that today was a dream debut for Tamil girl Niranjana and no one is talking about it. We're talking about the women's test, which is also happening at the same time in England. Started today.
Yes.
So, any words on that?
So, well, if Niranjana has done well, then I think it's a great story because, well, it's just been what, maybe the first session of play, and I think she's done well. She's got a few wickets, so England, at least somewhere, England is reeling and India on top.
For now. Okay, so let's ask the larger question. Milind, has Duncan Fletcher failed India?
Ayaz and Govind, I have some definite views on the subject of appointment of a coach.
Okay.
In my view, a coach only enhances 20% of the performance. I would not hold coach responsible in totality. I mean, I'm sure he tells them don't play across the line, don't chase outside the off stump, let your foot come here and there. But it's the team who has to do it. And in cricket, a coach can do only so much, because I don't know what role the coach in a football team really plays. But you can see that it's a very vociferous coach in a football team. In a cricket team, he just sits there, does nothing, gets paid. So I'm not of the view, maybe I'll take an Ian Chappell view, that the coach, or a Shane Warne view, that maybe I didn't have one in my time.
Right.
I would think that the coach is just another waste of time.
Right. So let me quote a few people on Duncan Fletcher. Right. So former England captain Michael Vaughan said he's the best analytical cricket coach I've ever worked with.
Yes.
Jacques Kallis of South Africa said he understands, Duncan Fletcher understands batting better than anyone else. Marcus Trescothick, who scored 10,000 runs for England International, said he changed the culture of how we played. Right? So a lot of credit is being given to Duncan Fletcher, and also for bringing in a certain sense of statistical intimacy in the way they approached bowlers and the way they batted.
So it comes back to the point that I was making, that a coach enhances a performance. I mean, so if all these players, even Nasir Hussain and Michael Atherton on television said that he's the best coach that England's ever had in their time. So nothing can, I mean, how can we hold him responsible? I would think that the Indian team is greatly responsible, more than the coach. 80% of the responsibility of playing the game goes to the Indians. Poor cricket, really. But I suppose we'll delve with that subject some other time.
So there are opinions, and I actually share Milind's opinion that the coach does not go out there and play for you. A cricket coach might enhance, might add value in terms of technical inputs, because he's seeing it from a distance, he's detached, so he can spot some weaknesses or technical errors that are coming in. Like Dhoni mentioned, he says Duncan Fletcher has been very good. He tells Virat also where he's going wrong, but he can't go out and play for Virat. And just as a aside, people like Shane Warne or Ian Chappell, who are actually very dismissive of the coach in the game, they think that the captain is the be all and end all. And I subscribe to that view. They say that the job of the coach is something which takes you from the hotel to the ground and from the ground back to the hotel.
Or maybe he conducts the net.
Or conducts the net.
Okay.
So
let's get another a couple of views. Navneeth Krishnan, cricket fanatic from Hyderabad. What do you think?
Hey Govind, I'm actually gonna plus one what Milind and Ayaz said. I'm just trying to relook. I'm just trying to think back. Like, it's been 3 years, a little over 3 years that Fletcher's been in charge, and as soon as he took charge, we went to England, and then we went to Australia in 2011, where we lost 4-0 a couple of times. But there was not probably too much time that Fletcher spent with the team. On the flip side, in the ODIs and in the T20 department, India has done reasonably well. Obviously, the Champions Trophy speaks for itself. Finals in the T20 World Cup as well. Yes, we haven't been the best abroad in terms of tests, and that's never been good even before 2011 as well. So that's obviously an area of concern. But to be honest, there's only that much that coach can do, just like Milind and Ayaz point out. It's a completely different role that coaches play in football, but it's far more restricted and limited in the world of cricket. And I don't think, yes, there is time to actually answer that a little later, but I don't think it's time for us to actually answer that right now. And I think he still needs a chance to prove himself.
Right. Okay. So, Ayaz, amongst the other things he did was he devised a number plate system in Zimbabwe. Again, a new approach. I know that we are saying it's only 20%, but that 20% seems to have been a lot in his case, as one can see, or one can at least sort of dig out.
Govind, a lot of these are, in a sense, we've all been through HR practices in organizations. You know, you play imaginary games, you do this, you know, you introduce football as one of the warm-up exercises before nets. All kinds of things happen. Ultimately, the crux is how the team goes out and performs not in the nets, but in the actual match situation. I think that's where, and maybe he has inherited a kind of culture in Indian cricket where we are not just used or any longer used to playing 5-day matches. We don't have the wherewithal.
So the more fundamental problem,
it's a more fundamental problem than just the coach. Now, one can always argue that under Gary Kirsten, we did extremely well. But look, when Fletcher took over the coach, our team had Dravid, Tendulkar, Lakshman, Harbhajan, Zahir Khan, Yuvraj. We went and got licked 4-0 in England. We got licked 4-0 in Australia. What is Fletcher going to teach Tendulkar or Dravid or Lakshman about batting or Harbhajan and Zahir Khan about bowling?
Okay. So let me take two comments. Sriram Chaudhary says, of course he has failed. I mean, no questions about that according to him. Then Nice Chap says, it is the 11 on the field who make the difference. The coach can only help in preparation. So here's the other question, and let me start with Milind on this. If you were to flip the question around or the issue around and ask, are the Indian team in a position to accept good coaching or good direction or good training from someone like a Fletcher, and is there a failure there too, even for that 20%?
I'm quite sure that the Indian team must be listening to Fletcher. I mean, everybody wants to score runs, everybody wants to get wickets.
Right.
But basically, if you can't play the seaming ball or the swinging ball and you commit the same mistakes, which means the frame of mind, is the temperament, isn't it? Test cricket, Govindraj Ethiraj, as you know, is only temperament.
Yeah.
I mean, you may be, people like Bapu Nadkarni had the ugliest of stands, but the way he played against the West Indies or so many others that played for India in the past, you know, it's a question of, you got to be strong. And the lesser mistakes you make, like you saw Murli Vijay, I mean, he left thousands of balls outside the off stump, and that's the way to play. I'm sure Fletcher must be telling his boys, do this all the time, because when you see him bowling to them in the nets or throwing to them in the nets, he's explaining. But you go out there in middle, it's only the boys who've got to do it.
Right, and there is this whole young players part, and which is something that has come up in the past as well. But let me just take two more comments and then we'll come to it. So Nikhil Verma says Fletcher has been a massive failure, still there because the Babus feel that all is well with the team. Second, Firoz says Duncan, like Dhoni, is bulletproof, loser mindset overseas and no coaching benefits to any player. I think there is something more from Nikhil Verma, but I'll come back to it later. So the young team, is there a generation gap which is also preventing?
It could be. I mean, these are the things that have kind of cropped up in my mind. Is there a problem of communication? Not just the age factor, but also the language factor, the cultural factor. The same man was very successful with the English team, but that was 10 years ago. Has he aged so much, or the game has evolved somewhere differently, and therefore he's incapable? There are some areas which bother me about Fletcher's tenure.
Okay.
For instance, this is, despite being a young team, a far fitter team. It's a very poor catching team. They just can't hold catches. You don't have, even now in this team, specialist slip fielders. This is something you anticipate and you build up. You know that Lakshman and Dravid have quit 2 years ago.
Right.
You've got your best fielders in the slips, but they are not the best slip fielders.
Right.
Which is Jadeja and Virat Kohli, and we've taken 11 catches, dropped 8. You can't win a match in England.
He's also made a statement saying that Indian bowlers don't understand batting as perhaps well as they should. This is a statement made by Fletcher. Right? And perhaps that's where he wanted to focus some of his training efforts. Is this sort of, does this add to the points that you're making?
It could be, because when he says they don't understand batting, it's not just how they bat themselves, but how do batsmen think.
Exactly.
Because you have, one of the things that you learn in a contest, when the conflict is there between bat and ball, is you have to outthink or outwit. The batsman tries to outwit the bowler, the bowler tries to outwit the batsman. Now, if you don't anticipate how the batsman is going to think, then obviously you are pedestrian, you are very predictable, and the batsmen take a heavy toll of you. Now, that could be very valid.
Right. So, Milind, let me come back to you. So, if we were to sort of now roll this forward, and we've got to now come back to the game in some way, and there are a lot of matches and games to be played, what needs to be done?
What needs to be done is that the players will have to steel themselves first. The morale must be pretty low. But I like taking one point further from what Ayaz is saying. Didn't Fletcher strategize for the last 2 years about who's going to do the catching?
Absolutely.
And I feel that in every test match, you see different players playing in the slips. I mean, that's just not on. No team in the world has slip fielders who switch over from cover point to slip to third man. No, it doesn't happen. Unless the skipper doesn't listen.
We are assuming that Fletcher had a role in that.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless I don't know, unless the skipper is not listening to him.
Okay.
Now, all these things happen.
And that's a problem too.
We don't know in the dressing room what happens. But taking this forward, well, I think the English series may be over. Maybe over. India, perhaps, if Fletcher, taking again what from Ayaz said, is the communication problems. I mean, I don't think Jadeja or the others who are there probably don't understand the way he wants to communicate. I mean, that's a very important thing in our culture. So why not an Indian coach? There are many top-class Indian coaches, but we just don't want them, the team doesn't want them. There could be various reasons for it. Maybe the Indian coach has a huge ego, maybe the Indian captain doesn't want an Indian coach who will, you know, at that point in time. So we are in difficult times.
Right. So here's another point, and Navneeth, I'm going to come to you if you want to pose a question to either Milind or Ayaz. Here's some SM says team management wanted someone who should not ask questions and only give suggestions. Fletcher fits well in that criteria, right?
But I think historically, if you look at it, at least in the last 15-18 years, for some reason, Indian players and the senior most players have been very averse to an Indian coach.
Okay.
Now, it could be because of, you know, anticipating problems of ego, as he mentioned, or, you know, these guys, maybe it's a very political environment, somebody who comes from the outside may not be politicized. Incidentally, almost all countries now seem to have foreign coaches, except Australia and South Africa. They tried foreign coaches, both flopped very badly. Mickey Arthur bombed completely for Australia, they've gone back to an Australian coach. And so to South Africa. So,
and when you say bombed, obviously they lost a series of matches.
Very badly.
For which they felt the coach was responsible
because
in some
I think their cricketing culture or their sporting culture is otherwise very robust. They don't need, you know, other elements coming in and trying to
Does the
sort
coach
things
take
out.
an equal sort of blame as compared to proportionately to the cricketers after a series gets over, which has obviously not gone well?
Andy Flower quit as England coach after England lost 0-5. So, you know, this happens.
Right.
Mickey Arthur was thrown out.
Just to add to what Ayaz says, all these foreign coaches are answerable. They have to plan. They have to answer all these questions of why they failed. I don't think in India anybody has been having a direct chat with Fletcher that these are your responsibilities and this is what we need to. The accountability factor happens in Australia, in England, in South Africa.
So why do you say there is no accountability?
For reasons of culture.
Okay. So, no, but if we've appointed someone, surely we would ask.
But how would we know?
But you got a 2-year extension till the World Cup.
Yeah, 2016.
So, you know, it's interesting that he's perhaps become a very wealthy man, but he's lost his sleep and he's lost some weight. But I want to ask this question, and Milind, this is a question directed at you. Is there, and I'm just trying to rationalize what's been happening, that India seems to be facing a peculiar problem, like the West Indies. They just cannot play the 5-day match, or they're struggling, especially overseas. One of the reasons is that overseas especially, your captain, your coach, half the players they don't know, they haven't seen. When was the last time you know Mahendra Singh Dhoni has played a domestic cricket tournament? He's got bowlers like Pankaj Singh, Ishwar Pandey, so and so, Stuart Binney, who is only seen in T20 IPL matches.
Right. Okay, so you're coming back to the ecosystem
so
of a 5-day.
So too the coach, because the coach only comes in when the international tournament is on.
Right.
So, unlike say in the English system, where the captain knows all the players because they play a full season of domestic cricket, or in Australia, where domestic cricket is given huge importance, or in South Africa, they don't compromise on their domestic cricket because, you know, that shakes the edifice. I think in India we've been guilty of that.
And to add to what Ayaz said, the coach and the captain have a far greater say in selection in India.
Okay, got it. Navneeth, do you have any question or anything that you wanted to pose to Ayaz or Milind here?
Little bit. So this was exactly what happened in the 2003 World Cup, where we were literally at after our performance just before going for the 2003 World Cup, right after the New Zealand trip. Literally, we had the entire country, including the media, doing everything possible at the Indian team, and we actually came up with what happened in South Africa after that for the next 1.5 months, barring the final, right? I'm starting to think, like, sometimes is it just a mindset thing? And now, especially the manner in which we lost this last test, we did lose the one before that as well. But I just think the manner in which we lost this game is probably igniting something, the spirit that we would want to see, and I'm hoping for a comeback in the last test. But do you sense anything of that sorts, if you get what I'm trying to say, like if things are really at a slump, with your back against the wall in every way possible, when you're right at the bottom, it generally gets the best out of you. And hopefully, like, the manner in which we lost will eventually get the better out of us in the next test.
So can I answer that? I think to an extent what he's saying is right, and it's filled with optimism, which is great. And it could work out that way. We might actually do extremely well in the World Cup, but that's like mixing up apples and oranges. In Test cricket, India is struggling. In limited overs cricket, India is not struggling.
Right. Yes.
That's the big difference.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for people like us, Milind and I, who've been great followers of Test cricket, and he's been obviously a player of great distinction, is that we were the #1 team in 2011. We are now number 6, barely above New Zealand, barely above New Zealand. And what's happening globally, we have seen that other teams have wised up that you have to get adept at playing in other lands, otherwise you're no good as a team. So South Africa go to Sri Lanka, completely change their game to win the series. New Zealand go to West Indies, they adapt their game completely differently to beat West Indies in West Indies.
Correct.
South Africa beaten by Australia in South Africa. Sri Lanka beat England in England.
Yeah. No,
but we are struggling wherever we go.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, Navneeth?
Yeah, so Ayaz, I just have a follow-up to that now since you're bringing that point up, right?
Yeah.
Probably you have a little more insight, but when was the last time any of the current Indian cricketers actually played county cricket? Like, would you know if the exposure of like, for example, Dravid, Sachin and all of them in that era did play quite a good amount of cricket overseas as well, right? Apart from playing for India, right? Yeah. Do you feel that this team has been exposed to those conditions, not in the national colours, but in club cricket enough for them to even have that confidence? Or if the exposure is only from the national squad, then obviously we're going to be found wanting time and again even in the future as well.
So let me answer that question. Sachin played only 1 season for Yorkshire and then he was 18 or 19 years old. He never played county cricket after that, never played anywhere else outside of India, apart from overseas tours when he represented India. Rahul Dravid may not have played more than 2 seasons in county cricket. Saurav Ganguly maybe 2 or 3 seasons. Anil Kumble maybe 1 odd season. Javagal Srinath maybe 2 seasons. It's not like the old days where Bishan Singh Bedi played 8-10 seasons for Nottinghamshire or Northamptonshire and so on and so forth. I think that today there are enough overseas tours and the BCCI or the Indian Cricket Board is rich enough to anticipate. This team went 15-20 days in advance to acclimatize. It's got 18 players, a squad which has never been such a big squad earlier. So, you know, being the richest board does not make you the best cricket team. Ultimately, that's what it is.
So, by the way, let me interrupt you for a second. We've also got an interesting quiz coming up where we've asked some questions and the answers are interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Also, if you have a 5-test series, and I cannot imagine that there's no single game between the 5 test matches. What do the players on the bench do? Just warm themselves, is it? No. Something is wrong somewhere. You can't have too much cricket. And the Indian cricket standards will go up if we concentrate more on our domestic cricket. Taking an earlier point that Ayaz said, neither does Fletcher nor Dhoni knows what is happening beyond that inner circle of 15 players. And they don't allow, or they're not wanting to discuss anybody further because they haven't seen them.
Right, and it's a very, very valid point. You're saying effectively they're all meeting for the first time, at least in this context, or the day of the match or a few days before.
How much has Dhoni seen of Pankaj Singh? You know, to set a field for Pankaj Singh is going to be a challenge for him. How much does he swing the ball?
Yeah, and what is that kind why of bounce does he give? The sort of
so he's playing out of, you know, sheer gut or trial and error also. To be fair to Dhoni, you know.
Yes, one last final point just before we probably end. You know, I see Dhoni's stance as a keeper. I mean, let Duncan Fletcher come on air and say, or come in the press and say, I approve that. I've never seen that stance by any keeper in the world in the last 125 years of cricket. Does Duncan do so? At that point in time, how important is the coach? And there's where Duncan Fletcher needs to be persuaded and be made responsible.
Okay, so and so therefore we also coming down to the conclusion that he's not being as forceful as he should be, or not being allowed to.
No, I think it's a cultural issue in terms of cricket cultural issue. So one can be overly critical of Dhoni or of Fletcher, but there is a certain way in which Indian cricket is working.
Okay,
so and I don't think it is very conducive to test match cricket as of today, except when you're playing at India. And there also, remember, 2 years back, England came and, you know, licked us. They beat us 2-1.
So the question we started with was, has Duncan Fletcher failed as an Indian cricket coach?
If you look at the record sheet, if you look at the stats, certainly it would seem that.
Okay.
Certainly it would seem that.
Okay.
If you apply all the criteria that is applied by other test countries, yes, he has. Okay. But in my view, the team has.
Okay. And we spoke to a lot of young people earlier, as you saw, and they were fairly forgiving as well. And some of the people who've sort of reached out to us on Twitter also feel that it's the 11 men on the ground that matter. Speaking of which, the women, of course, have done well, and we must point that out again today. Okay, quiz questions. We asked who was India's coach before Fletcher. That was our first question. The second question was who is India's highest wicket taker in Test cricket, and the third one was who is India's highest run scorer in Test cricket.
Oh, that I don't know.
Greg Chappell.
Gary Costin, Greg Chappell.
Gary Costin.
Gary Twiston.
Gary Keston.
Maybe it's that MS Dhoni. I don't know.
Ishan Sharma.
I forgot. I don't know. I think Harbhajan Singh.
Harbhajan Singh.
Anil Kumble.
Anil Kumble.
Sachin Tendulkar.
Sachin Tendulkar. Sachin Tendulkar.
Sachin Tendulkar.
Sachin, no doubt.
Sachin Tendulkar.
Sachin.
Well, there's one answer everybody got right.
Everyone knows, except that some wish that he attended more
Even the Rajya Sabha members would know that answer.
Okay, so the other ones, of course, answers were going all over. But it's interesting that people did know who was India's coach before.
Yes,
before
I found that very interesting.
Yeah,
you know. Nobody seemed to know Anil Kumble. They just forgotten.
Yeah, everyone forgot Anil Kumble, but they knew Gary Kirsten, and they also are the same people who said that we should.
And there's a reason for it. It's not because of Test cricket, because Gary Kirsten was the coach when India won the World Cup in 2011. It's still very fresh.
Correct, right. So success does have some fathers, if not many.
Yes.
Right, we've run out of time completely. Thank you very much, Ayaz. Thank you very much, Milind and Navneeth, for joining us from Hyderabad. We're going to be back with Cricketer Mania on Tuesday. Thanks for watching.